Israeli weather back there. That's what.
A miracle,
Weather,
miracles that like that I cannot do.
weather in Florida is beautiful.
Weather in Florida is beautiful. That's what I hear. I think I'm scheduled to be there end of February. Hope by then it's still beautiful. Let me just make sure that my volume is on because I can barely hear you, Izzy. Here, let me bring that up. There we go. Okay. All right. So I think we're ready to start a new piece. Okay, we were in the laws of Shutfin and laws of partnerships. That's what we were discussing in our last, when we last finished. So the new she'ela is as follows. Umnim shenishtatfu be'umnus, kegon sha'asu b'nehem kinyan chalipin shekol malacha sheyase echad mehem, yischalku shava b'shava berevach. So the following question. Two people formally enter into a partnership. They make an actual kinyan to say that what each one does for the business will be split, the profits will be split evenly between the two of them. Ha'im asu kinyan beinehem yesh kan shutfus ve'en echad yachol lachzor bo. How do you dissolve such a partnership? In other words, is there a way to just step out of the partnership and just call it quits? Okay, so tshuva. So the answer is ha'umnim shenishtatvu be'umnas afal pi shekanu miyadam eno nechshavim shutvim. He says even if two people make a kinyan, they're still not considered to be legally partners. Kagon shnei chayatin o shnei orgim. Let's say two tailors or two weavers. Today we would say like two doctors or two lawyers. But no, this is the good old days when people did manual labor. Okay? Shehitnu beinehem shekol sheyikach zev zev b'malachtu yeh b'neim b'shutvas. They enter into an agreement that whatever I bring in, each one of us brings in for the work that we do, we will split it evenly. He says that's not enough to constitute a partnership. She'ein adam makneh davar shelo bala olam, because a person cannot give over something that does not currently exist. That's like, for example, if you want to buy futures from me, things that don't currently exist, but things that I anticipate will exist. Let's say I want to sell you my next crop of my next harvest. So the Gemara discusses that it's very difficult to create a kinyan on something that doesn't currently exist. So on the same basis, what this tshuva is basing itself on is that, let's say I produce a beautiful garment for a customer.
Too bad Ron Becker's in.
Yeah, that's right. This would be right up Ron's alley. I produce a beautiful garment, and I decide that I'm going to charge $1,000 for this garment, and we agree that we'll split the profits. Okay, we're just giving an example from the garment business. Okay, so
I said too bad Ron Becker's.
right. So because that garment doesn't currently exist, I have no halachic way of making you the owner of that co-owner of that garment. Okay, even though we made a kinyan, we made a contract that says that whatever we sell in the future the profits will be split between us. That can't be legally binding on merchandise that does not currently exist. Okay, so that's an important principle. So let's say Ron enters into a partnership with Hal, and Hal, decides that he and Ron are going to be partners. So whatever dresses Ron produces, they're going to share in the profits. Now, why Ron does that? Maybe Hal provides him with services. It's not clear why, but let's say they go into that agreement. Any dress that Ron has currently in his warehouse, they can become partners in. But anything that Ron produces after that partnership is entered into cannot be considered to be owned by the two parties because it hasn't been produced yet. Avol, im hayu lokchin hachayatim habegadim atzmam v'tofrin osan umochrin. But let's say the two tailors, they purchase the fabric themselves, they process it, and they sell it. Olokchin ha'orgim shesi v'ha'erev mima oseim v'orgim umochrim, or the weavers in the second example, purchase the woof and the warp themselves, and they weave it together and they sell it. V'nishtatfu b'mos shelokchin bo, and they were partners in the purchase of the fabrics, and they sell it together. Hare ilu shutfa, then they are partners. Anything that they sell. So let's say Hal goes ahead and he takes a bunch of dresses that Ron produced in his warehouse and then goes to the United States to sell them. So Hal cannot keep the money himself. He's got to split it with Ron, even though he's doing all of the selling. So, and then they split the profits because the merchandise actually belongs to both of them because they've entered into an agreement over merchandise that they've actually been able to make a kinyan upon because it actually exists. So everything that he says I've quoted to you up until now is the opinion of the Machaber in the Shulchan Aruch. Ulam berama hevi diyesh cholkim v'sovrim. However, the opinion of the Ramah brings a second opinion. And he says that there are those who feel that entering into a partnership arrangement is unlike entering into an ownership arrangement. It's not like regular buying and selling. That there's no need to actually acquire for the two of them the actual merchandise. Ella kol ma shemasnim ze im ze miskayim b'amira ba'alma. All that is necessary to do is to enter into a verbal contract that they say we are now partners, and even if the merchandise doesn't yet exist, then ve'enon yicholun lachzer bahen kol zman hashutva shehisnu va'afilu ma sheyarvichu lahaba, and therefore they cannot sever the partnership relationship, assuming that it was contracted for a certain finite amount of time. Like they say, okay, for the next year, we agree that we're going to be partners. We'll give it a try for 1 year, and whatever we acquire and sell, we'll split the profits evenly. So according to the Ramah's second opinion, he says that even if this merchandise didn't exist at the time of the agreement, you cannot sever the relationship. Avol yesh omrim d'chol ze le'inyan ma shehirvichu kvar de'ein ne'emanim lomar shechazru bahem. But some say that that's only regarding what they've already profited. At that point, if they've already brought in profits, a partner cannot say, well, I've decided I don't want to be partners with you anymore, so I'm keeping all the profit of this last deal for myself. That you cannot do. But according to this third opinion, even if there was a finite period that was established for the partnership, moving forward, I can sever the partnership relationship at any time. And once that statement, that declaration is, we are no longer partners, then any future profits that come in for my business efforts, I don't have to split with my partner. But that's only when there was only a verbal contract that was made. If there was a kinyan or a signed contract, so then, even according to this third opinion, you cannot back out of the partnership until that period has expired, the period of the contract. So what we've seen are three opinions as far as how partnerships can be binding legally. Opinion number one is the Machaber, who says that you cannot even constitute a partnership when it involves the sale of merchandise that has not yet come to fruition. And presumably that would be true for services as well. That would be true for services as well. Let's say I provide professional services. I provide intellectual property services, whatever it is. So that also is a davar shelo bala olam. Doesn't yet exist, that service, and therefore, presumably, according to the Machaber, a person, it's on the honor system that we split our profits, and and therefore a person can say, I've decided we're not compatible and we're not going to continue working together at any time. According to the Ramah, if we're partners on a business that sells merchandise, then once we've entered into the partnership, you cannot sever that partnership if it was stipulated that it was going to be for a specific amount of time, even if no kinyan was made. Just the verbal declaration that we are now partners is legally binding for that entire period, and neither party can back out. According to this third opinion, I guess, which is a spin-off of the Ramah based on the commentaries, that's only for profits that have already been earned by the corporation. But any future profits, you can, if there was just a verbal agreement that created the partnership to begin with, you could sever it. But if it was in writing, or if there was a contract or a kinyan that was made, then you have to wait until the period is over. Questions, comments?
Just wondering on that first opinion, how would you ever contract for services? Because by definition, they haven't happened yet on this, I think.
Right. How could you ever contract for services, or for let's say the manufacture of goods, if they haven't been made yet? So if you remember, we learned before that if you make a kinyan on the purchase of property, so even if the property has not been manufactured yet, but you hire someone as a kablan, you hire someone as a skilled laborer to, let's say, to build a table for you, or to build a chair for you, or to manufacture a dress for you. I think technically we said that that either party has the right to back out at any point, unless there was some kind of deposit. A deposit can be lost. If a guy, like I put down a deposit that you're going to build me a table and then you never do it, so I'm entitled to get my money back. But if then the table makers can say, the carpenter can say, if you want me to build a table for you, I need a deposit. And then that would be the safe thing to do, because until he delivers the goods, you don't become chayiv to pay him for the table.
Maybe if it's a custom item.
Yeah.
They almost want the deposit. I mean, even a deposit may not be enough, because if you spend weeks building something that can't be used anywhere else.
Well, presumably it would have to be a deposit that's large enough to
make it worth the fellow's while to go ahead and do this.
That would even apply if you built something in home. Built in something that can't be taken anywhere else. Don't you? You're redoing a kitchen.
Well, if he attaches it to the fixtures of your property, how can you say that you don't want it? You've already.
What if you're licensing a piece of software?
I'm having trouble hearing you, Izzy.
Sorry,
Yeah,
what?
I think you need to. My volume's is on the highest, but
Okay.
maybe you're not close enough to the mic.
I turned it up. Can you hear now?
No, it's still very hard to hear.
Let me test it.
Like I'm hearing it as a whisper.
Maybe you can put it in the chat. What he wants.
Can you hear better?
Not really. No.
All right, never mind.
Okay, if you want, do you want to put it in the chat?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Okay.
But
So-
Robert, just what you're saying, so like, I would also agree, people have things in writing, concrete writing, a buy-sell agreement, all that stuff, that's kind of silly, in a partnership.
Get witnesses.
But people do it, people enter into partnerships all the time on a handshake, right?
No, but they also would have, exit plans and all that stuff, like buy-sell agreements with the, you know, if someone wants to get out, they get it by a market value or whatever, so. With, you know, you need both sides to,
It depends how sophisticated the situation is, right? Sometimes it can be a simple situation.
you know, but. You need an exit plan, the guy wants to get out, how does he get out? You know, situation first.
Okay, what if you are licensing a piece of software? How do you terminate a partnership there?
The Rabbi, I think there's a distinction between whether or not a partnership agreement's been formed and whether a contract's been formed. So in all these kinds of cases, licensing or buy-sell and all that stuff, while there may not be a partnership per se, there's an agreement between the parties to do certain things that might be enforceable. So even if the goods, for example, haven't been produced yet, maybe in halacha, let's say there's no partnership, but maybe there's still an agreement that's binding that when the goods are made, that certain obligations will come
A
forward.
person does have the ability to indebt himself to owe a certain amount of money.
Mhm.
I can do that at any time. I can just say, Paul, I'm going to give you a gift of $1,000. And if I write that paper, if I write that paper to you and I give it to you, that becomes like a promissory note that you can use to extract at any time. So you do have the ability to generate debt even out of thin air, as long as you draw it up as a contract. But you cannot say that a verbal contract is binding if I agree to build a table for you and I end up not delivering it, or you end up not wanting it at the end of the day. There was no legal exchange that was made, and therefore either party really does have the right to back out. And if you recall, we learned about labor law. I can even cancel an agreement for you to come work for me. Like we have a verbal agreement. I come to my office on Tuesday morning, and you'll start then, and we'll see how things work out. And you show up Tuesday morning, and all of a sudden the guy says, I realize I don't need you. Sorry. So we learned that ein alav elatar umos, that while what the person did is not nice and it's not appropriate, but halachically, an employer, if you've never started working for me, I have a right to basically say, I know what I said, but I don't need you. And therefore, sorry for your time. You know, the person may be a mechusar amana, he may be acting in poor faith, but legally, he's within his rights to cancel a work contract. And I believe the same thing is true with a kablan, unless, you know, like person you're hired to make a table for you, you can cancel at any time, unless, and that's why a kablan would be wise to enter into a contract where either he requires a deposit to be put down on his efforts, or some other way of making it legally binding that you're going to owe him the $1,000, let's say, that he's charging for the table, you know, at the conclusion of, or upon delivery of the goods.
And obviously, any such thing anybody put out for the beforehand, that has to be taken place, right?
No, I don't think so. If there was just a verbal agreement between us, let's say
materials and things.
I know, but there was never any contract that was signed. There was never any kinyan that was made. Let's say, for example, you hire me to make you a table. I go and I purchase all the lumber and the materials and the varnish and the paint and everything, but you never made a kinyan on those items. So I'm basically working on trust.
How does the conversation really go then? I mean, you were going to do something together, so there must be somewhere in there that has to be somebody.
So either it's because I know you and I trust you that you're going to make good on your word, or I'm going to need a deposit. I'm going to need a deposit from you of, let's say, half of the money up front, and the rest due, or we'll go in stages, which is what a lot of contractors do when they do work. They say, 50% up front, and then another 25% upon 50% of completion of the job. And then the remainder is due upon delivery of the final product. That's the way you would do it in order to protect yourself, right? Especially when it comes to a customized piece of merchandise. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. So if we were to look at some of the background information from this in the footnotes, the first shita, which is that partnerships cannot be legally binding, even if they made a contract between them for any future acquisitions and sales, because Eina demakna davar shelo ba'ola olam, because you can't transfer ownership of something that does not yet exist. This is straight out of the Rambam. He says, "Ha'umnim shenishtatvu be'umnis afal pi shekanu miyadam einam shutvin." If you have artisans, manufacturers that enter into partnership, even when they made a kinyan, they made a legally binding contract, they're not legally partners. He says, "Keitza shnei chayatim u'shnei orgim sheiznu b'neim shekol sheikach zeh v'zeh b'malachto yeh b'neim b'shaveh ein kan shutfim klal she'eino demakna davar shelo bo la'olam." Right? Because like we just saw before, two tailors or two weavers, if they haven't yet produced anything, so then they can't be partners in future items that they produce. But if the merchandise already exists, even if it exists in raw form, but it's the merchandise exists, and we enter into partnership over this warehouse of merchandise, of fabric, then if we weave it together or we sew it together, and it becomes, and now we can market it and sell it for a nice price. So because we were able to make a kinyan on the raw ingredient, so then we become partners in the final product as well. And therefore, whatever we sell, we have to split the profits. Even if there are grievances, meaning like even if one partner says, it was done in my warehouse, Ron says to Hal, I did all of the workmanship. You were on vacation when it was time to sell, so I made the sale. But Hal can still say, yeah, but we were partners, and after that you can dissolve the partnership. But when you're talking about a warehouse full of goods, if there was a contract made over the partnership, you can't sever the partnership just because you feel that you did all the work and the other guy didn't do any of it.
So future royalties, that's services, how does that work?
So let's say royalties, my dad was in that kind of business. So you can own a percentage of future royalties based on a contract, let's say on intellectual property. Let's say I produce an album, and I become a partner on the property that on the intellectual property that you've already produced. So you could argue that intellectual property is a davar shebal olam. It's here. It's just that it exists not in physical form, but it exists in intellectual form. And so whatever royalties come in, those are royalties from future sales of a property that was already produced, right? I'm just thinking out loud. Okay. So going back to Izzy's question about what if you're licensing a piece of software? How do you terminate a partnership? Well, I don't think a partnership really exists when you're licensing software. You're renting a piece of intellectual property.
You're licensing out.
What?
Out. You're licensing out.
Let's say you're renting out, you're licensing out a piece of intellectual property. How do you sever the partnership? When the person stops paying you, you can say you no longer have a right to use my intellectual property. So
sometimes there's termination clauses that give you 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, whatever, right?
Uh-huh.
It stipulates when you do that.
Right. But that's not an issue of partnership. That's not Hilchos Shutfus. Okay. So what does the Ravid have to say on the Rambam? He says, the Ravid disagrees with the Rambam, and he says that my teachers taught me that a person who's an artisan can sell himself and his ability to produce future items, like a servant. A servant can sell himself, and so he becomes indentured for all future production. V'cheshem shematzinu ba'omeres yikadshi yadai la'osehen, heviu hatur b'simen kuf ayin vav. Just like a woman could say, my hands are hektish, so I don't have to produce anything for my husband. Because one of the contracts that's implicit when you get married is that anything that a woman produces belongs to the husband. What if a woman says, I hereby declare my hands to be hektish? So her future production belongs to the temple. It doesn't belong to her husband. The eye, it's something that's lo bala olam, but the hands that produce are bala olam. They do exist. So therefore, the Ravid disagrees with the Rambam and feels that two skilled individuals can enter into a partnership where each one indebts his hands or his ability to produce to the other partner. So because of a Beis Yosef, ulai kavanas Ravid lomar, the Choshen she'eved mishtabed lasos malacho shelo ba'olam, keven shegufo hu ba'olam, hachanami mishtabed ashutaf efshur desvir leila Rambam d'shayni yasa. So the Beis Yosef explains, yes, it's true, the future produced merchandise doesn't exist, but the hands that produce the merchandise do exist. And therefore, according to the Ravid, you could create a partnership on products that have not yet been produced. Okay. And so that at least is part of the machlokes between the Machaber and the Ramah. Okay, so at least we have a little bit more clarity on where that machlokes comes from and why the Ramah says that it is possible for two people to enter into a partnership where they commit themselves to split the profits of whatever they produce even in the future, even though it currently does not exist. Okay, and the Ramah says that that's done even by verbal commitment to each other. And if it was for a finite period of time, neither party can back out at any time. Okay. So that's that. Okay, so I guess now we have the basis, but how would we paskin? Let's say a guy wants to dissolve the partnership. He goes, takes him to Beis Din, and Beis Din would probably have to take both opinions into account. But if there's a normative way that Ashkenazim paskin, we generally do paskin like the Ramah, whenever there's a machlokus between the Machaber and the Ramah. So that would seem to be the normative psak, that you can't back out of a partnership on items, certainly not on items that have already been sold and profit and the profit has been generated.
About the view of the Ravid, how would you asking for?
Well, that's what I'm saying. The Ramah is going like the Ravid. He's going that's the basis of the Ramah's psak, is that he's going like the Ravid, who says that even though the product is not yet here, but the intellectual prowess to produce the product does exist in the metaphor of the hands. The hands are, oh yeah?
Yeah. And also secular law says you can terminate a partner, assume there's a partnership, assume there's no terms in the agreement that are contrary. A partnership at will can be dissolved at will. A partnership for a fixed duration cannot. It has to wait till that duration, like a year or whatever.
Yeah.
Say.
Right.
And a partnership for a fixed project. Let's say we'll make 100 dresses together or something like that. You have to wait till the 100 dresses are made before you terminate.
Right.
That's the law.
Right. And that's consistent with the Ramah. Yeah. Yeah. So, all right, you got to be careful about who you get into bed with, figuratively, shall we say. Okay. All right, we'll hold it here for today. Have a great day, everyone.